My heels clicked against the polished floor of the upscale Seattle restaurant, the chatter of James's colleagues fading into a dull roar as I stood there in my red dress, the one he'd never have chosen, watching his face twist with shock and fury. "What are you wearing?" he hissed, his voice low but sharp as he grabbed my elbow, pulling me aside from the table where his law firm partners sat, their wine glasses glinting under the chandelier. 6 years of marriage, and tonight, his big dinner, I'd walked in not as the quiet, compliant wife in the blue dress he'd demanded, but as the woman who'd just landed senior marketing director at Maxwell & Brooks, my promotion papers still warm in my purse. "We need to talk after this," I said, my voice calm, steady, a blade hidden in silk, and his grip tightened, his blue eyes narrowing as the control he'd clung to for years slipped through his fingers. "I'm Rachel, 34 years old, a marketing professional who'd spent too long shrinking under my husband James's shadow. My dark hair, once tied back to please him, now falling loose, my hazel eyes sharp with a fire I'd forgotten I had. I grew up in a small Oregon town, dreaming of big cities and bigger goals, but 6 years ago, I married James, a charming lawyer with a smile that hid his need to dominate, and let him whittle me down, my wardrobe, my job, my spirit all molded to fit his standards. Tonight, though, was the end of that story, the moment I'd planned for weeks, and as I faced him, my heart pounded with a mix of triumph and nerves, the taste of freedom sharp on my tongue. "Rachel?" one of the partners, Evan, called, his friendly voice cutting through James's glare as he stood, his gray suit crisp, his smile genuine. "Is this your wife, James? We've heard so much. Join us." The table turned, eyes on me, and I slid my arm free, stepping forward with a smile, my chest tight but my resolve ironclad. "All good things, I hope," I said, easing into a seat, my red dress a bold slash against the muted tones of the room, my hands steady despite the tremor I felt inside. James followed, his jaw clenched, his mask of charm slipping as he sat beside me, his Scotch glass already half empty. "Marketing, right?" Evan's wife Claire asked, her blonde bob tilting as she leaned in, her curiosity warm, untainted by James's usual dismissals. "James says you're with Maxwell & Brooks?" Her voice was light, genuine, a stark contrast to the way James always framed my job, like it was a quaint little hobby he tolerated, and I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest, a rare moment of being seen without his filter. The restaurant's soft jazz hummed around us, the chandelier casting golden light across the table, and I straightened in my red dress, the fabric a bold statement against the muted elegance of the room, my heart pounding with a mix of pride and nerves as I prepared to drop the bomb I'd been holding for weeks. "Yes," I said, my voice clear, steady, as I met her gaze, my hands resting lightly on the table, hiding the tremor I felt inside. "Actually, I just accepted senior marketing director there today. Pretty big news." The words landed like a spark, igniting the table, gasps, murmurs, a chorus of congratulations, and I felt a rush, a heady blend of triumph and defiance, my eyes flicking to James beside me, his face draining of color, his Scotch glass frozen halfway to his lips. "Senior director?" Evan said, his brows shooting up, his gray suit shifting as he leaned forward, his tone bright with surprise. "Maxwell & Brooks, that's huge. James, you never said she was this accomplished." His words were a friendly jab, but they hit James like a punch, his jaw tightening, his forced smile twitching as he set his glass down with a clink, his fingers drumming the table in a restless beat. "It's recent," he said, his voice tight, clipped, his blue eyes darting to me with a flash of something dark. Anger, maybe, or panic. "I've always encouraged Rachel's modest ambitions." The word modest hung there, sharp and familiar, a barb he'd wielded for years to keep me small, but Claire laughed, oblivious to the venom beneath it, her wineglass glinting as she raised it. "Modest?" she said, her laugh warm, incredulous. "Maxwell & Brooks poached half our marketing team last year. They only take the best. Well done, Rachel." The table joined in, clinking glasses, nods of approval, and I felt a thrill, sharp and sweet, as James's narrative cracked, his colleagues' attention shifting to me, their smiles genuine, their praise a balm on wounds he'd spent years carving. "Thanks," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside, my chest swelling with a pride I hadn't felt in too long. James shifted beside me, his hand brushing mine under the table, a warning, a claim. But I pulled away, my skin prickling with disgust, my resolve hardening as I sipped my wine, letting the moment stretch, savoring his discomfort. Senior director, damn, said a new voice, smooth and teasing, cutting through the buzz. It was Maya, my assistant at Maxwell and Brooks, who'd slipped in late, her sleek black ponytail bouncing as she slid into a seat across from me, her dark eyes sparkling with mischief. She'd insisted on crashing after I'd told her about tonight's plan, her youthful energy a stark contrast to the polished crowd. Told you she'd kill it, didn't I? She grinned at me, then glanced at James, her brow arching. You must be proud, huh, James? Of course, he said, his smile stiff, his tone flat as he adjusted his tie, his fingers fumbling slightly. Rachel's always had my support. The lie was smooth, but I saw Evan's eyes narrow, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. His mask was slipping, and they were starting to see it. Support? Came another voice, low and edged with something bitter, drawing every head to the end of the table. Linda, James's mother, sat there, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her pearls gleaming against her black dress, her sharp eyes fixed on me. She'd arrived with the group, her presence a surprise I hadn't expected, and now she leaned forward, her lips pursing. James has always pushed you to be better, Rachel. Don't twist this into something it's not. Her tone was defensive, protective, a mother shielding her golden boy, and I felt a pang, a mix of irritation and pity, knowing she'd enabled him for years. Pushed me? I said, my voice calm but firm, my eyes meeting hers across the table, my heart thudding as I held her gaze. He told me 3 weeks ago I'd never be good enough for him, said he regretted marrying me. That's not pushing, Linda. That's breaking. The words spilled out, raw and unfiltered, and the table fell silent, forks pausing mid-air, eyes widening as the air thickened with tension. Rachel, James hissed, his hand clamping my wrist under the table, his grip bruising, his voice a low growl. Don't start this here, you're embarrassing me. His breath was hot with scotch, his control fraying, and I saw a flash of the man who'd spent years chipping away at me, my plain clothes, my small job, my overcooked eggs, all to keep me beneath him. Embarrassing you? I said, pulling my wrist free, my voice rising just enough to carry, my chest tight with a fury I'd bottled too long. You've embarrassed me for 6 years, James. Every dinner, every comment, every time you told these people I was still finding my way. I turned to the table, my hands trembling but my resolve iron. Tonight's not about you, it's about me. I'm done. My voice shook on the last word, a crack in my armor, but I held my head high, the red dress a shield against his glare. Rachel, what's this about? Evan said, his tone cautious, his eyes darting between us, the friendly lawyer now a mediator in a scene he hadn't signed up for. Everything okay? Not really, I said, standing, my chair scraping the floor, my heart pounding as I faced them all. James, Linda, the partners, Maya's wide-eyed grin egging me on. I accepted that promotion today, and I filed for divorce this week. Papers are on your desk, James. Your lawyer's got a copy. My voice was steady now, the weight lifting with every word, and I saw his face collapse, shock and rage warring as he shot to his feet, his glass tipping, spilling red across the white tablecloth. Divorce? Linda gasped, her hand flying to her chest, her pearls clinking as she stared at me, then James, her voice shrill. Rachel, you can't. This is absurd. James has given you everything. Her defense was fierce, blind, and I felt a stab of sadness for her, trapped in the same delusion he'd fed her. Everything? I said, turning to her, my voice soft but cutting. He gave me 6 years of criticism, told me I'd never be good enough, that I was lucky he picked me. I'm not the lucky one here, Linda. He is, and he's losing it. My eyes flicked to James, his face red, his hands clenched, and I felt a surge of power, a reclaiming of the woman I'd buried. You're making a scene, he snapped, stepping closer, his voice a low growl, his hand hovering like he might grab me again. We'll talk at home. This isn't you, Rachel. You're upset, that's all. His tone was desperate, clinging to control, but I saw the cracks, his colleagues watching, Claire's brow furrowing, Evan's quiet concern, and I smiled, small and real. It's exactly me, I said, my voice firm, my chest swelling with a freedom I hadn't tasted in years. The woman you married believes she needed you. She's gone. I'm leaving, James. Don't contact me. It's through the lawyers now. I turned, my heels clicking as I walked away, Maya's whistle of approval trailing me, the table's stunned silence a victory bell in my ears. Maya's whistle followed me as I walked out of the restaurant, the cool Seattle night air hitting my face, a sharp contrast to the stifling heat of James's glare and the stunned silence I'd left behind. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step a hammer blow to the life I'd shed, my red dress swaying like a flag of victory, my chest buzzing with a mix of exhilaration and raw, unshaken nerves. I could still hear James's voice, "Rachel, wait!" cracking with a desperation I'd never heard before, but I didn't turn back, my heart pounding with a freedom I'd fought weeks to claim, the weight of 6 years lifting with every stride. Evan's voice echoed in my ears. "Everything okay, James?" His tone laced with doubt, a crack in the facade James had built, and I felt a small, fierce smile tug at my lips, knowing the table had seen him unravel, his control slipping through his fingers like sand. Linda's gasp, "Divorce? Absurd!" rang hollow now, her defense of him a fading echo as I stepped into the street, the city lights glinting off wet pavement, my breath visible in the chilly air. I'd done it, walked away, not just from him, but from the shadow he'd cast over me, and as I slid into my car, the leather seat cool against my skin, I let the adrenaline crash over me, a wave of triumph tinged with the ache of what I'd endured. Let me take you back. 3 weeks ago, it started in our kitchen, the granite countertop cold under my palms as James sneered, "I regret marrying you. You'll never be good enough for someone like me." His words had been a spark, igniting a quiet fury I'd buried under years of his digs, my plain sweaters, my small job at Maxwell and Brooks, my overcooked eggs, all petty jabs to keep me down. I'd grabbed my keys, my voice steady, "We'll see about that," and walked out, his confusion trailing me as I said, "Just the gym." In the car I'd made a list, lawyer, bank account, apartment, a plan to prove him wrong, not with tears, but with action. At the gym, I'd signed up for training, not for his snide comments about my jeans, but to feel my own strength, the clang of weights a rhythm I set for myself. The air was thick with sweat and determination, the mirrors reflecting a version of me I'd forgotten, shoulders back, eyes fierce, my dark hair pulled into a messy bun that didn't need his approval. My trainer, Jess, a wiry woman with a buzz cut and a grin that dared me to push harder, shouted, "10 more, Rachel! Own it!" And I did, my muscles burning, my breath ragged, each rep a defiance against the years James had whittled me down. I wasn't here to slim down for him. I was here to build something he couldn't touch. And as I dropped the dumbbells, my chest heaving, I felt a spark, small, but mine. The next morning I'd met my lawyer, Kate, a sharp woman with a no-nonsense bob, who'd grinned as she reviewed my case. "Your salary's yours. He can't touch it," she'd said, her pen tapping the desk, her office a clutter of files and coffee cups, the Seattle skyline gray beyond her window. I'd felt a thrill, a secret weapon forming, her words a key unlocking a door I'd thought bolted shut. "He's been living off your stability, not the other way around," she added, her green eyes glinting with a mix of amusement and steel, and I nodded, my hands trembling slightly as I clutched my bag, the weight of 6 years shifting beneath me. I'd opened a separate account that afternoon, slipping into the bank between meetings, the teller's polite smile a quiet witness to my rebellion. Transferring my paychecks felt like stealing my life back, each click of the keyboard a step away from his grip, my heart racing with a giddy fear as I watched the numbers shift. Mine, not ours. James had always waved his firm's paycheck like a trophy, implying everything we had was his doing. But now I saw the lie. And as I left the bank, the drizzle dampening my coat, I felt lighter, a secret blooming in my chest. Sarah, my college roommate bold and brassy, had helped me find a bright, modern apartment across town, its white walls a canvas he'd hate, too feminine for his taste. We'd met at a coffee shop near her art gallery, her wild curls spilling over a leather jacket, her laugh loud as she scrolled listings on her phone. "This one," she'd said, tapping a photo of a loft with big windows and hardwood floors, her hazel eyes sparkling. "It's you, open, alive. He'd despise it." I'd laughed, a real laugh, the kind I'd forgotten, and we'd toured it that weekend. The realtor, a nervous guy named Tom, fumbling with keys as I ran my hands over the countertops, imagining a life without his rules. "Sign it," Sarah urged, leaning against the wall, her boots scuffing the floor, and I did, my name alone on the lease a quiet roar, my pulse quickening as Tom handed me the keys. "He'll lose it when he sees this. No beige, no proper decor," she'd teased, and I grinned, picturing James's sneer, the thrill of that image fueling me. I'd started moving in pieces, books, clothes, a lamp, slipping them out while he worked late, his oblivious texts, dinner Thursday blue dress, a backdrop to my silent escape. Back at work, I'd thrown myself into the campaign, my desk a chaos of notes and coffee mugs, my laptop glowing with slides I'd once hesitated to pitch. James's voice, "Not everyone's ambitious, Rachel," had haunted me, but now I shoved it aside, my fingers flying as I crafted a vision for Maxwell and Brooks, my heart pounding with a daring I'd buried. Claire, my boss, caught me late one night, her gray bob catching the light as she peered over my shoulder. "This is brilliant," she'd said, her voice firm, surprised. "Senior director's open. Apply, Rachel. You're ready." I'd stared at her, my throat tight, then nodded, a rush of pride drowning his echoes. That night James came home, scotch on his breath, his tie loose as he sprawled on the couch. Dinner with the partners, their wives so polished, he'd slurred, his eyes raking my t-shirt and leggings. "Why can't you try harder?" I'd looked at him, his smug face a mask I'd once feared, and said, "Maybe I'll never be that wife." My voice soft, steady, a blade he didn't see. He'd smirked, satisfied, missing the steel beneath, and I'd slipped out, Jim again, my bag packed with more of my life, my plan ticking closer. A week later, I'd met Kate again, her office warm with the smell of coffee, her desk now piled with my papers. "He'll fight the alimony, claims you're unstable," she'd said, rolling her eyes, her pen slashing notes. "But we've got bank records, texts, his control's clear, you're set." I'd exhaled, a knot loosening, and she'd grinned. "You're a badass, Rachel. Own it." I'd laughed, shaky but real, my hands clutching the divorce draft, the words irreconcilable differences, a freedom song. Sarah dragged me to a bar that night, her arm around me as we toasted. "To Rachel, unleashed," her voice booming over the music, her glass clinking mine. A guy approached, Mark, a photographer with a shy smile and a camera slung over his shoulder, drawn by her energy, and we'd talked, his quiet curiosity a balm after James's noise. "You're glowing," he'd said, and I'd blushed, a flutter of something new stirring, a hint of life beyond the cage. Thursday loomed, my board presentation at 2, James's dinner at 7. I'd stood before the execs in my red dress, my slides sharp, my voice steady, my chest tight with nerves but alive with purpose. "Outstanding," Claire had said after, her hand on my shoulder. "The job's yours." I'd beamed, my heart soaring, the woman he'd dimmed roaring back, and as I drove to the restaurant my phone buzzed. James. "Blue dress, hair, don't embarrass me." I'd smiled, my rebellion ready. Thursday hit like a storm. My board presentation at Maxwell and Brooks looming at 2 p.m. James's dinner at 7, a ticking clock in my mind. I stood in front of the execs, my red dress a bold slash against the gray conference room, my slides clicking through, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach, every word a brick in the wall I was building around my new life. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the pointer, but I pushed through, outlining a campaign that wasn't just good, it was mine, born from nights of coffee and defiance, a vision James had never seen because he'd never looked. Claire watched from the head of the table, her gray eyes sharp, nodding as I finished, and when I sat, my chest heaving, she said, "Outstanding, Rachel. The job's yours if you want it." My heart leapt, a rush of pride and relief crashing over me, my lips curving into a smile I couldn't hide, the weight of his doubts. "Not everyone's ambitious," dissolving in the applause that followed. "Why now?" Claire asked later, her office warm with afternoon light, her hands clasped on her desk. "You've always had this in you." I paused, my throat tight, then said, "I finally realized my worth. Someone spent years convincing me I didn't have any." Her brow furrowed, understanding flickering, and I left with the title, Senior Marketing Director, ringing in my ears, my heels clicking down the hall, my chest buzzing with a victory he'd never claim. By 6:30 I was pulling up to the restaurant, the upscale hum of voices spilling out as I stepped inside, my red dress catching eyes, my hair loose and wild, nothing like the tame bun he'd demanded. James spotted me from the table, his blue eyes narrowing, his hand freezing mid-gesture as he hissed, "What are you wearing?" His grip on my elbow was tight, possessive, his Scotch breath hot as he pulled me aside, his colleagues Evan, Claire, Linda watching with polite confusion. "We need to talk after," I said, my voice calm, a blade sheathed in velvet, and his jaw clenched, his control fraying as I slipped free, joining the table with a smile. "Rachel?" Evan said, his gray suit crisp, his tone warm. "James's wife. We've heard so much. Join us." I sat, my chest tight but my resolve iron, and Claire, Evan's wife, not my boss, leaned in, her blonde bob tilting. "Marketing, right? Maxwell and Brooks?" I nodded, my heart racing as I dropped the bomb. "Yes, I just accepted senior director there today." The table erupted, congratulations, clinking glasses, and I felt a surge, triumph and defiance mixing as James paled beside me, his hand twitching on his glass. "Senior director?" Evan said, impressed. "James, you never mentioned this. She's a powerhouse." James forced a smile, his voice tight. "It's recent. I've always encouraged her. Modest ambitions." Claire laughed. "Modest? They poach the best. Well done, Rachel." His facade cracked, and I saw Linda, his mother, stiffen, her pearls glinting as she snapped. "James pushed her to be better. Don't twist this." I turned to her, my voice steady. "He said I'd never be good enough, regretted marrying me." "That's not pushing, Linda, that's breaking." "Rachel," James growled, his hand clamping my wrist under the table. "You're embarrassing me. Stop this." I pulled free, my voice rising. "You've embarrassed me for years. Every dig, every dinner. I'm done." I stood, my chair scraping, facing them all. "I filed for divorce. Papers are on your desk, James. It's over." His face collapsed, shock and rage warring as he shot up, spilling wine across the tablecloth, Linda gasping, "Absurd!" "You can't," he hissed, stepping close, his voice desperate. "We'll talk at home. You're upset, that's all." I smiled, small and real. "It's me, James, the me you tried to bury. Don't contact me. Lawyers only." I walked out, Maya's whistle, my assistant, crashing for support, trailing me, the table's silence a victory bell, Evan's, "Everything okay, James?" A final crack in his world. The night air hit me, cool and sharp, and I drove to Sarah's, her loft warm with laughter, her arms pulling me into a hug. "You crushed it!" she cheered, clinking glasses, and I let tears fall, not of pain, but joy, my chest light, my new life unfolding. Days later, Evan called. "James is on probation. Associates complained after that night. We're watching him." Linda's voicemails begged, "He needs you," but I deleted them, her denial fading into noise. Weeks turned to months, my apartment a sanctuary, bright art, cozy furniture, colors James would have mocked. I thrived at Maxwell and Brooks, my campaigns soaring, my office overlooking the Sound a testament to my worth. Sarah dragged me hiking, my boots crunching trails, and Maya joined cooking classes, her laughter a new rhythm. Mark, the photographer from that bar night, texted, "Coffee?" And I said yes, a flutter of something new stirring, my heart open in ways James had closed. James faltered. His firm sidelined him. Clients drifted, his perfect image tarnished by whispers of that dinner. Linda's silence hinting she'd seen his flaws. He'd tried dating, targeting younger women with promises of guidance, his old game replaying, but I heard he'd lost his edge, his swagger dimmed. A year later, at the firm's gala, I wore red again, a guest of honor, Evan grinning. "We're partnering with you. Your work's gold." Claire's wife, now a friend, said, "We saw his digs. Should have spoken up." My table buzzed with laughter, my voice free, no longer muted. But here's the twist. Sarah heard he's pitching a comeback, a changed man's story to a new firm, a new woman on his arm, his old patterns whispering. Will he rise, fooling someone else, or crash again, his flaws too loud to hide? I don't know. I've learned worth isn't what they give you, it's what you take, and freedom's the prize for shedding their chains. James is paying, his world shrinking, while mine grows, bright and bold. What do you think? Will James reinvent himself, or is his fall just beginning? Drop your take. I'm curious how you'd write his next chapter.